The massive crystal gates of the Dragon Queen's palace sparkled like diamonds against the dark space. Purple and blue light from nearby stars danced across the floating fortress that had protected the Dragon Empire for thousands of years. This was no ordinary day though. Something was about to change everything. Queen Zara glided through the cosmic winds on her enormous wings, each one the size of a battleship. Her scales shifted from deep emerald to bright gold as she moved, a sign of her ancient power. She had just finished her daily patrol around the outer moons when she spotted something unusual near her palace entrance. There, lying on the cold stone steps, was a tiny bundle wrapped in torn cloth. The fabric looked human-made, rough and simple compared to the fine materials dragons preferred. But what caught her attention wasn't the cloth. It was the sound coming from inside. A baby was crying. Queen Zara landed with a thunderous impact that shook the entire structure. Her massive head, easily 20 feet long, lowered toward the small bundle. Inside the torn wrapping was a human infant, no more than a few days old. The baby's skin was dark, his tiny fists waving in the air as he wailed against the cold space wind. Most dragons would have simply stepped over such a thing. Humans were considered weak creatures, barely worth noticing. They lived such short lives and had no magic, no fire breath, no ability to survive in space without protection. To most dragons, humans were like insects, numerous but unimportant. But this baby did something that surprised the ancient queen. When her enormous golden eye came close to examine him, he didn't stop crying or cower in fear. Instead, he looked directly at her. His small dark eyes seemed to challenge her, as if demanding to know why she was taking so long to help him. Interesting, Queen Zara rumbled, her voice deep enough to vibrate through the palace walls. Her chief advisor, a silver-scaled dragon named Corex, slithered out from the palace entrance. His serpentine body coiled nervously when he saw what had captured the queen's attention. "My queen," he hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air with disgust. "Shall I dispose of this creature? Some human must have left their spawn here by mistake. Or perhaps they thought we might find it amusing." Queen Zara's eyes flashed dangerously. Dispose of him? This child was not left here by mistake, Corex. Look at where he lies. The advisor examined the scene more carefully. The baby had been placed directly in the center of the gate's entrance, right on the ancient symbol carved into the stone. It was the mark of royal succession, where new heirs traditionally presented themselves to claim their birthright. "Surely you don't think?" Corex began, his voice trailing off in horror. "Someone wants this child to be found. More than that, they want him to be claimed as heir." Queen Zara gently extended one massive claw, careful not to harm the infant. The baby immediately grabbed onto it with both tiny hands, his crying stopping as he focused on this new curiosity. The strength in those small fingers surprised her. Most creatures that touched a dragon's claw would be burned by the residual magic, but this human child seemed completely unaffected. If anything, he appeared to be absorbing some of her power, his eyes growing brighter and more alert. "This is madness," Corex whispered. "A human heir? The noble houses will never accept it. The other dragon queens will declare war on us for breaking tradition." Queen Zara lifted the child carefully, cradling him against her chest where her heart's warmth would keep him safe. "Then let them try. This child has spirit, Corex. Look at him, abandoned in space, left to die, and yet he shows no fear. He demands attention instead of begging for mercy." The baby had indeed stopped crying and was now examining his surroundings with obvious intelligence. His gaze moved from the queen's face to the glittering palace walls, then to the stars visible through the transparent dome above. There was something calculating in that look, something that reminded Queen Zara of her own youth when she had first learned to hunt among the asteroid fields. "What will you name him?" Corex asked, resigned to his queen's decision even if he disagreed with it. Queen Zara considered this carefully. Dragon names carried power, reflecting the bearer's destiny and place in the universe. This child would need a name that honored both his human heritage and his new dragon family. "Tyler," she announced finally. "Tyler Stormborn, heir to the Crystal Throne and future ruler of the Dragon Empire." The declaration echoed through the palace corridors, carried by the mystical winds to every corner of the floating fortress. Within hours, every dragon in the empire would know that their queen had done the impossible. She had adopted a human child as her successor. As Queen Zara carried baby Tyler into the palace, she couldn't help but smile at the chaos this would cause. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you underestimated both dragons and humans. 15 years had passed since that fateful day at the Crystal Gates. The floating palace that once echoed only with the deep rumbles of dragon speech now rang with something entirely new, human laughter mixed with the ancient songs of the Dragon Empire. Tyler stood in the center of the war room, sweat beading on his dark forehead as he manipulated the holographic star maps floating around him. At 20 feet tall, he was still tiny compared to the massive dragons watching him, but his presence filled the room in ways that had nothing to do with size. "Impossible," muttered General Thane, his bronze scales shifting from gold to deep red with frustration. "The Vega system defense grid has stumped our best strategists for 200 years. How did this human solve it in 30 minutes? Tyler wiped his hands on his training uniform and grinned up at the towering dragon general. "You guys always think in straight lines. Attack from the front, meet force with force, honor above tactics. But what if you don't attack at all?" He gestured to the hologram, where tiny ships moved in patterns that made the dragon's head spin. Instead of charging directly at the heavily fortified positions, Tyler's strategy involved using gravity wells from nearby planets to slingshot small teams behind enemy lines while the main fleet created a diversion on the opposite side. "Humans call it thinking outside the box," Tyler explained. "You dragons have amazing power and wisdom, but sometimes you miss the simple solutions because they seem beneath you." Princess Kira, Queen Zara's biological daughter, coiled her serpentine body tighter around the room's pillars. Her emerald scales rippled with what Tyler had learned to recognize as barely contained jealousy. "Mother spoils you with these games, little brother. Real war isn't won with clever tricks." "Maybe not," Tyler replied calmly, "but real war isn't won by charging headfirst into plasma cannons either." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Tyler had grown up knowing that half the Dragon Court saw him as an amusing pet, while the other half considered him a dangerous mistake. Only Queen Zara's absolute authority kept them from expressing these feelings more directly. But Tyler had stopped caring about their opinions years ago. He'd learned to prove himself through results, not words. "Show them the Kepler scenario," Queen Zara's voice boomed from the entrance as she glided into the chamber. Even after all these years, Tyler still felt a surge of warmth when she looked at him with pride. Tyler activated another hologram, this one showing a complex battle involving multiple species and environments. "This one took me 3 days to crack," he admitted. The key was realizing that the Centauri fighters weren't trying to win, they were trying to survive long enough for their evacuation ships to escape. He manipulated the display, showing how understanding each species' true motivations revealed weaknesses and strengths that pure military analysis missed. The human refugees weren't cowards, they were buying time. The crystal entities weren't obstacles, they were trying to protect their young. The robotic defenders weren't malfunctioning, they were following outdated programming. "Once you see what everyone really wants," Tyler continued, "you can find solutions that help everyone win. Well, everyone except the actual bad guys." General Thane's rumbling laugh surprised everyone in the room. "The boy has a point. We've been so focused on defeating enemies, we forgot that some of them might not want to be enemies at all." That evening, Tyler walked alone through the palace gardens, a massive greenhouse dome filled with plants from 1,000 worlds. This was his favorite place to think, surrounded by the incredible diversity of life the Dragon Empire protected. He was examining a flowering vine from the Andromeda sector when he noticed something wrong. The plant's bioluminescent patterns were spelling out words in ancient dragon script, a warning. Tyler's blood went cold as he read the message. Someone in the palace was planning to kill him during tomorrow's succession ceremony. The assassin had apparently tried to deliver the warning through other means, but this was their last resort. Moving carefully through the garden, Tyler began to piece together the conspiracy. Hidden among the exotic plants were surveillance devices, poison dart launchers, and communication equipment. Someone had been planning this for months, maybe years. But here's where being human gave Tyler an advantage the conspirators hadn't expected. Dragons thought in terms of honor, direct confrontation, and ancient traditions. They would either challenge him openly or poison his food at a formal dinner. Humans, however, understood paranoia, investigation, and turning enemies against each other. Tyler spent the next 6 hours carefully documenting everything he found, tracking communication signals, and analyzing financial records that dragons considered beneath their notice. By dawn, he had identified not just the would-be assassin, but the 3 noble houses funding the plot and their ultimate goal, starting a civil war that would tear the empire apart. Instead of running to Queen Zara for protection, Tyler made a different choice. He was going to handle this himself, using methods that would shock the Dragon Court and prove once and for all that humans belonged among the stars. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and they had no idea what a determined human could accomplish when his family was threatened. The Galactic Dragon Council hadn't met in 800 years. When 12 massive starships appeared at the edge of the Aurora Nebula, each one carrying representatives from the oldest dragon bloodlines in the galaxy, everyone knew something historic was about to happen. Tyler stood on the observation deck of Queen Zara's flagship, watching the ancient vessels take their positions in a perfect circle around the neutral meeting space. Each ship was bigger than a city, their hulls gleaming with scales and crystal formations that had been growing for millennia. Nervous? Queen Zara asked, her massive form coiled protectively around the chamber. Tyler shook his head, though his heart was racing. Just excited. I've been waiting for this chance to prove myself for years. The truth was more complicated. 3 weeks ago, Tyler had exposed the assassination plot against him, revealing corruption that reached into several noble houses. Instead of punishing the conspirators quietly, the Dragon Lords had demanded this formal trial. They wanted to humiliate Queen Zara by proving her human heir was unworthy. Elder Voss, the oldest dragon alive, spoke first when the council convened. His voice crackled like dying stars, ancient beyond measure. The heir must face the trial of 3 flames. Combat, to prove strength. Wisdom, to prove intelligence. Leadership, to prove worthiness to rule. Failure means death. Tyler stepped forward in his ceremonial armor, a unique blend of human technology and dragon craftsmanship that sparkled with energy fields. I accept the challenge. The combat trial came first. Tyler's opponent was Champion Drex, a massive warrior who had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of fighting. The dragon's scales were like black metal, his claws sharp enough to cut through starship hulls. The arena was a floating platform in open space, surrounded by energy barriers that would contain the battle. As soon as the fight began, Drex lunged forward with incredible speed, his jaws opening wide enough to swallow Tyler whole. But Tyler had spent 15 years studying how dragons fought. Instead of trying to match Drex's raw power, he activated the gravity manipulation devices built into his armor. Suddenly, the champion's own momentum worked against him as Tyler redirected the massive dragon's charge, sending him spinning helplessly through the arena. Impossible, shouted one of the council members. He's using technology instead of true strength. The rules say combat, Tyler called out as he avoided another attack. They don't say how to win. Using precise movements and perfect timing, Tyler turned Drex's size and strength into disadvantages. Every charge became a stumble, every swipe of massive claws met empty air. Within minutes, the mighty champion was dizzy, frustrated, and completely off balance. Tyler ended the fight by using a focused gravity pulse to pin Drex to the arena floor, not to hurt him, but to prove the battle was over. I yield to your experience, champion, Tyler said respectfully. But I don't yield to your power. The crowd of dragons fell silent. In all their history, no one had ever defeated a dragon champion through pure strategy. The wisdom trial was next. Elder Voss presented an ancient riddle that had puzzled the greatest dragon minds for 3,000 years. What grows stronger by giving itself away, becomes more valuable when freely shared, and creates power by accepting weakness. Dragons had spent centuries debating philosophical meanings, diving deep into ancient texts and mystical interpretations. Tyler listened to the riddle once, thought for 30 seconds, then smiled. Knowledge, he said simply. The answer is knowledge. The silence stretched even longer this time. You see, Tyler continued, dragons think about this riddle like it's some deep spiritual mystery. But it's actually a math problem. Knowledge grows when you teach it to others. It becomes more valuable when shared freely because more people can build on it. And it creates power by accepting that you don't know everything and need to keep learning. Elder Voss's ancient eyes widened. In 30 seconds, you solved what we couldn't manage in 3 millennia. Because I think differently, Tyler replied. Not better, just differently. The final trial was leadership, and this one worried Tyler the most. He was given command of a mixed fleet to defend the mining colony on Titan 7 against raiders who had been terrorizing the system for months. The Dragon observers expected Tyler to use traditional tactics, but when he arrived at Titan 7, he did something unprecedented. He didn't just talk to the Dragon garrison commander. He talked to everyone. The human miners told him about the raiders' patterns. The Centauri engineers explained the colony's weak points. Even the crystalline entities that the dragons considered mindless decoration turned out to have valuable intelligence about energy signatures in the area. The raiders aren't just randomly attacking, Tyler realized. They are specifically targeting the quantum refineries. Someone's paying them to disrupt production. Instead of waiting for the next attack, Tyler organized a coordinated defense that used every species' unique abilities. Humans provided technical expertise and adaptability. Centauri contributed their engineering skills. The crystalline entities offered their ability to detect energy patterns across vast distances. When the raiders arrived expecting to find the usual confused, uncoordinated resistance, they instead faced a perfectly orchestrated trap. The battle lasted 20 minutes, ending with the complete capture of the raider fleet and the discovery that they were working for a competing mining corporation. Outstanding, admitted General Thane. You didn't just win a battle. You solved the entire problem. Elder Voss rose to his full, impressive height. The trials are complete. Tyler Stormborn has proven himself worthy through strength of mind, depth of understanding, and the wisdom to unite rather than divide. But as the council prepared to formally recognize Tyler as Queen Zara's heir, warning signals began flashing throughout the fleet. Long-range sensors had detected something impossible approaching from the edge of known space. Ships were vanishing. Entire star systems were going dark. Something was coming that made raiders and political conspiracies seem like children's games. Tyler looked at the approaching darkness on the sensor displays and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. The real test was about to begin. The emergency alarm echoed through every Dragon ship in the fleet as the impossible became reality. On the massive holographic display in Queen Zara's command center, star systems were simply disappearing. Not destroyed, just gone, as if they had never existed at all. Tyler stood frozen, watching the sensor data stream in real time. The Epsilon Dragon homeworld, where 3 billion dragons had lived for 5,000 years, had vanished in less than 6 hours. No debris, no energy signatures, nothing. Just empty space where an entire solar system used to be. What kind of weapon can do this? General Thane's voice shook with something dragons rarely experienced, fear. The answer came from the outer patrol ships. Through crackling communications, they reported seeing something that defied every known law of physics. Massive entities that looked like living shadows, consuming everything in their path. Matter, energy, even light itself seemed to feed these creatures. The dragons had a name for them from their oldest legends, the Void Devourers. Ancient stories claimed they came from outside reality itself, but most dragons had dismissed these tales as myths. Our flame weapons are useless, reported Captain Drax from the front lines. The fire just makes them stronger. They absorb our magic and grow larger. Tyler watched the battle reports flood in, each one worse than the last. Dragon after dragon fell to enemies that seemed to feed on the very powers that made dragons mighty. Traditional tactics, magical attacks, even ramming speed, nothing worked. We need to stop thinking like dragons, Tyler said quietly, his mind racing through possibilities. Queen Zara turned her massive head toward him. What do you mean? Dragons fight with power, magic, ancient wisdom. These things eat power and magic. But humans, we fight differently. We adapt, we innovate, we use whatever works instead of what's supposed to work. Tyler pulled up communication channels that most dragons ignored, the human colony network scattered across the galaxy. While dragons communicated through formal channels and ancient protocols, humans had built a chaotic web of connections that spanned thousands of worlds. I need to talk to the human colonies, Tyler announced. Not as a dragon prince, but as someone who understands what humans can do when we're desperate. What followed was the fastest mobilization in galactic history. Tyler reached out to Admiral Nicole Brooks commanding the Earth Defense Fleet, to Engineer Kevin Park running the Mars shipyards, and to Dr. Lisa Chen leading the Europa research stations. The dragons watched in amazement as these humans didn't bow or ask permission. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work. We've been tracking these energy signatures for months, Dr. Chen reported through the quantum communicator. Our scientists thought they were natural phenomena, but if they are actually hostile entities, we might have some ideas. Within days, something unprecedented began happening. Human ships arrived at dragon shipyards, not as conquered territories or trading partners, but as equals working toward a common goal. The sight of human engineers welding armor plates alongside thousand-year-old dragons would have been unthinkable just weeks before. Tyler found himself at the center of it all, translating between species that had barely communicated before. Dragons thought in terms of eternal strategies and honorable combat. Humans thought in terms of rapid prototyping and whatever-work solutions. The Devourers consumed directed energy, explained Chief Engineer Rodriguez as she worked alongside Dragon Artificer Corinth. But what if we hit them with chaotic, random energy patterns? Like static instead of music? The Dragon Craftsman's scales shifted thoughtfully. Interesting. Our flame breath is focused, controlled. But human weapons scatter energy in unpredictable ways. The hybrid ships that emerged from these collaborations looked like nothing anyone had ever seen. Sleek human hulls covered in dragon scales, human computers running dragon magic algorithms, weapons that combined laser technology with mystical fire. But the most important innovation wasn't technological, it was tactical. Humans don't fight fair, Tyler explained to the combined fleet commanders. We use distractions, misdirection, psychological warfare. We make enemies fight the battle we want instead of the battle they expect. The fleet that assembled at the edge of Void Devourer territory was a sight that made history. Dragons and humans working side by side, their ships humming with hybrid technologies that bent the rules of physics in entirely new ways. Tyler stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching his mixed crew prepare for battle. Communications Officer Jake Williams coordinated with Dragon Navigator Silas to plot attack routes that used both human unpredictability and dragon wisdom. All ships report ready, sir, announced Tactical Officer Maya Johnson, her human fingers dancing across controls designed by dragon claws. Tyler opened the fleet-wide communication channel. Today we don't fight as dragons or humans. We fight as something new. Something these devourers have never seen before. Through the viewport, the swirling darkness of enemy space waited. Somewhere in that void, entities that had destroyed civilizations for millions of years were about to learn what happened when the galaxy's most adaptable species joined forces with its most powerful. The final battle for reality itself was about to begin, and humanity was finally going to show the universe what they were really capable of. The battle exploded across 3 star systems as the combined human-dragon fleet engaged the Void Devourers in the largest space war the galaxy had ever witnessed. Tyler coordinated the assault from the command bridge of the Unity, his human intuition guiding ancient dragon fire with precision that amazed even the most experienced warriors. The hybrid ships moved like a deadly dance through space. Human vessels darted between massive dragon fighters, their chaotic energy weapons creating static patterns that confused the devourers while dragon flame followed up with devastating strikes. For the first time in galactic history, the shadow creatures seemed to hesitate. Target the large one on Sector 7. Tyler called out, watching the tactical display. Hit it with random pulse patterns, then follow up with concentrated dragon fire before it can adapt. The strategy worked brilliantly. The Devourer, expecting the ordered magical attacks it had been consuming for eons, couldn't process the scattered human weapons. When dragon flame struck its confused form, the creature actually took damage instead of growing stronger. But victory was short-lived. The enemy learned fast, adapting to each new tactic within minutes. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more appeared from the dark void beyond known space. The Alliance was fighting well, but they were vastly outnumbered. We're losing ships faster than we can replace them, reported Admiral Brooks through the communication link. These things just keep coming. That's when disaster struck. Queen Zara's flagship, the Eternal Flame, broke formation to protect a damaged human cruiser. Tyler watched in horror as his mother's massive vessel disappeared into a swarm of void devourers, their shadowy forms engulfing the ancient ship like a living nightmare. Mother! Tyler screamed, but the communication channels only returned static. The loss of their queen sent shockwaves through the dragon fleet. Several ships began retreating, their commanders losing hope as their greatest leader vanished into the void. The careful coordination Tyler had built started falling apart as grief and fear took hold. In that moment of despair, Tyler realized something that changed everything. He thought about Queen Zara finding him as a baby, about the dragons who had dismissed humans as weak, about every time someone had told him he didn't belong among the stars. The Devourers consumed everything they touched because that's what they were designed to do. They took power, knowledge, life itself and used it to grow stronger. But they had never encountered something that was freely given instead of forcefully taken. Tyler opened communication channels to every ship in the fleet, his voice carrying across the battle with determination that cut through the chaos. All ships, implement Protocol Hope, he announced. Dragons, I need you to do something that goes against every instinct you have. I need you to give away your treasure. The response was immediate confusion. What are you talking about? Demanded General Thane from his command ship. Your hordes, Tyler explained urgently. Every dragon collects knowledge, artifacts, power, and guards it jealously. But what if we shared it instead? What if we gave it away freely? Across the fleet, dragons recoiled at the suggestion. Their treasure hoards were sacred, accumulated over centuries of careful collection. Giving them away was unthinkable. Trust me, Tyler pleaded. The Devourers consume what they take by force. But they don't know how to handle something that's offered as a gift. One by one, the dragon ships began opening their vault doors. Streams of pure knowledge, collected artifacts, and stored magical energy flowed out in brilliant rivers of light. The human ships were ready, their quantum networks capturing and redirecting this incredible wealth of information. But instead of hoarding it or using it as a weapon, they did something unprecedented. They broadcast it freely throughout the galaxy, sharing millennia of dragon wisdom with every species that could receive the signal. The effect on the Void Devourers was immediate and shocking. The creatures, programmed for endless consumption, suddenly found themselves receiving instead of taking. The flood of freely given knowledge began rewriting their basic programming at a fundamental level. One by one, the shadow entities stopped attacking and began creating. Ancient devourers that had destroyed civilizations for millions of years started building instead, their void-touched abilities now focused on restoration rather than consumption. The battle ended not in destruction, but in transformation. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known became its most powerful ally, their ability to manipulate reality now used to rebuild what had been lost. Tyler stood in the rebuilt throne room of the Crystal Palace, wearing a crown that represented both dragon heritage and human innovation. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, dragons, humans, centauri, and even the mysterious crystalline entities that had been dismissed as decorations for so long. Today begins the Galactic Union, Tyler announced to the assembled delegates. Where our strength comes not from what we keep to ourselves, but from what we choose to share. Admiral Brooks stepped forward, her uniform bearing the combined insignia of human and dragon forces. The Earth colonies pledged their support to Emperor Tyler. Elder Voss, ancient beyond measure, bowed his massive head in respect. The dragon houses accept this new age, where wisdom flows freely instead of being hoarded. Even representatives from the transformed devourers attended, their shadow forms now pulsing with creative energy instead of destructive hunger. As celebrations echoed through the chamber in dozens of languages, Tyler reflected on the incredible journey from abandoned infant to galactic emperor. Queen Zara had seen something in that crying baby that no one else could, the bridge between what the galaxy was and what it could become. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or servants, but as the species that could bring everyone together. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in cosmic history, that was exactly what it needed.